So yesterday we learned about sine, cosine, and tangent. We also learned about the phrase SOHCAHTOA, right? Right? I'm gonna write this on the board. Make sure you can spell it correctly. Okay, I cannot. I cannot spell it correctly. Apparently. SOHCAHTOA. And what does SOHCAHTOA tell us? Sine of an angle equals what? The length of the side opposite over the hypotenuse. That cosine of an angle is what ratio? Not opposite, adjacent side to that angle over the hypotenuse. And tangent of an angle is the opposite side over the adjacent side. So we're still going to be using those today. So yesterday we focused on finding the lengths of sides of triangles using SOHCAHTOA. Today we're going to use it to help us find angle measures. Okay, so anytime we're going to use sine, cosine, and tangent, we got to make sure our calculator is in degree mode. So everybody, let's all make sure our calculators are in degree mode. I'm going to do the same. I got to wake mine up. It hasn't been turned on today. All right, let me clear it all out. So to see if our calculator is in degree mode, we hit the mode button that's next to the colorful second button. And then arrow down and make sure that radian is not highlighted and degree is. So to highlight degree, you arrow over to degree and hit enter. And if you hit the down arrow key that points down, then you will get it highlighted. Does everybody have degree highlighted? All right, how do we get back home? Yeah, second mode takes you home. Second mode takes you home. All right. So back to notes. So we want to make sure we're in degree mode. All right. So to find angle measures, we are going to use what we call inverse trig functions. So that's when you see the little -1 sign above the trig ratio. Okay, so if you see the little -1, that means the inverse of it. Okay, so do you see on your calculator above the sine, cosine, and tangent button, it has sine -1, cosine -1, tangent -1? Okay, so that means if you hit second sine, that does sine inverse. Second cosine does cosine inverse, and second tangent does tangent inverse. Y'all see that? So the little -1 things to get the -1 things to find angle measures, we're going to do second and then that button. Okay? So that's how we're going to get that. So you're going to find you might want to highlight that. To find angle measures, you have to do the inverses. Okay? So we're going to set up like we did yesterday. So notice it's a little bit different. They don't tell us an angle measure today. Y'all see that? They don't tell us an angle measure. That's what we're trying to find is the angle measure. So they give us two sides of the right triangle. Okay? So based on this X right here, 24 is what? The hypotenuse of the entire triangle. And that 15 down there is what? It's opposite from the X. So which one of those from SOHCAHTOA do you think we're going to use? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, because I have an opposite and a hypotenuse. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? I have the side opposite from my X and the hypotenuse of the whole triangle. So we're going to use sine. So you're going to write your ratio, sine, and the angle measure is X because we don't know it, equals opposite over hypotenuse. So you can leave off that step if you want to. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. So what is the length of the side that's opposite from X? 15 over what's the hypotenuse of the triangle? 24. Okay. So if I've got that whole fraction, I have the whole ratio right there, don't I? Yes, it can be simplified. You can simplify it if that's bugging you, but you don't have to. So to get the angle measure, y'all, if we got to find the angle measure, you're going to use the inverse sign. So you're going to say x equals sine inverse of that fraction. Okay? So that's what you're going to write down. To get the angle measure out of the parentheses, you do the inverse. So what we're going to type in our calculator. Y'all have this written down before I change screens? Y'all have it written down? Okay. So in our calculator, you're going to hit second sine, and then you're going to type in that fraction, 15 divided by 24, and then you're going to hit parentheses, and then you're going to hit enter. And you should get about 38.7. Did everybody get something close to 38.7? Okay, now we were finding an angle. So we say x is approximately, since we're rounding, 38.7 what? Degrees. If you're finding an angle measure, make sure you find a degree. You use a degree. Continuing on with okay, so that's it. If you're finding a side, you do regular sine, cosine, and tangent because you know the angle measure. If you're looking for the angle measure, you use inverse. Okay? So look at number 2. I'm going to zoom it so maybe I'll do my stuff better. Number 2, here's my x. So that 8 that they give me is what? Adjacent. The h that they gave me is what? Hypotenuse, right? So are we going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Cosine, because we got the adjacent and the hypotenuse, and cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, right? So we set it up cosine, and we don't know our angle measure, so x goes in the parentheses, equals adjacent over hypotenuse, so 8 over 11. Why'd I put an h? 8 over 11. And then, since we're finding the angle measure, x equals what? Inverse cosine of 8 over 11. Okay? Y'all with me? So in our calculator, what do we type? Second cosine 8 divided by 11, close your parentheses, enter, and we will round it to about what? 43.3 degrees. So x is approximately, you say 43.3 degrees. This is not terrible, is it? No. It's actually a little bit less work than some of them yesterday, right? And y'all are familiar with sine, cosine, and tangent now, so that makes it even simpler. Number 3. What do y'all think we're going to use? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent, because here's my hypotenuse and I don't know it. So if we don't have a hypotenuse, we're going to use tangent because it's the only one that don't need a hypotenuse. Y'all agree? So 20 is opposite from my angle x, and 37 is adjacent to it because it touches it. Opposite doesn't touch, adjacent touches. All right? So we're going to say tangent of x equals opposite over adjacent. So 20, over 37. So x is going to equal what? Inverse tangent of 20 over 37. All right, so calculator buttons. Second tangent, 20 over 37. Close parentheses, hit enter. What are we getting? Approximately 28.4 what? You okay? So far, so good? Let's do number 4, then you guys can try some. All right, here's x. What do y'all think? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Cosine, because 23 is the hypotenuse and 18 is what? Adjacent, because it touches my angle and it's not the hypotenuse. So we're going to use cosine of x equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Oops, sorry. So 18 over 23. Deleting everything. So x equals what? Inverse cosine of 18 over 23. All right, so in our calculator, we hit what? Second cosine, 18 over 23. Enter. That's about what? About 38.5. 38.5 what? Degrees. So any questions about finding angle measures? All right, y'all try the next two. Let me know if you need help. You got to use the right trig ratio or you're not going to get it correct. So that's probably the most important part, is make sure you're using the correct form of sine, cosine, or tangent.
So I had already factored it out, and I got to the end, and I was like, well, why did I do that? And all I had to do was right? So it happens to me too. Just make sure you pay attention, and you got it. It's like all these little puzzle pieces that have to be put together. Does that make sense? So just be very careful. We're good here? Number 14. What are the coordinates for the vertex of the parabola y equals 3x squared minus 6x minus 1? So if we're finding the vertex, we start by finding the axis of symmetry. What's the formula for axis of symmetry? X equals negative b over 2a. So x equals minus negative 6 over 2 times 3. So that's 6 over 6, which is 1. How many answer choices have an x value of 1? 2 of them. So I'm eliminating these 2 answers. Alright, so I actually do have to find the y value here. So we've got y equals 3 times 1 squared minus 6 times 1 is 1. So that's 3 minus 6 minus 1, negative 4. A is correct. We're found 14. Alright, now 15 seems to cause us some problems, and I'm not sure I understand why. Okay, so let's talk about 15. So you had 2 points labeled here with 2 boxes. Is everybody ready back? All you had to do was fill in those 2 boxes, and you were just given a bank at the bottom where you could fill them in. Does that make sense? What's this?
Check them with neighbors when you finish.
Right. So it's right order pairs. Now, if you went ahead and labeled this, that's fine. It's on the actual box. Pay attention to what the question is asking.
I can't say the word spelled.
Yes.
I think it is checking out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, the rest of the notes is really, it just starts reviewing yesterday's stuff. So that's it. So you'll be fine. You just need to make practice. Not the words? Not the word problem. Yes, thank you.
I can't say sign when it's spelled. Yeah, there's no way we'll be able to do
Because it's not spelled, it's abbreviated in 3 letters.
that. What's the whole word?
SINE.
Someone just said that. Put that.
They abbreviated them all 3 letters before the calculator.
Mine's gonna be sin, cost, and.
You're not that in my room.
Quadratic function is represented by.
All right. So number 5. that 41 and the 40, are you going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine, because 40 is opposite from the angle x, and 41 is what? The hypotenuse. So you're going to use sine. So sine of x equals what over what? 40 over 41. And so x equals what? The inverse of sine of 40 over 41. And then you type that in our calculator. I'm not going to do it on the screen. I'll do it here because it's quicker. Second sine 40 over 41. Y'all got that x was approximately how many degrees? About 77.3 degrees. Raise your hand if you got approximately 77.3. If you did not, you probably used the wrong ratio. You probably used cosine or tangent. Okay? That's really the only way to mix it up. Or you put the hypotenuse over the opposite, right? All right, number 6. Are you going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent, because we have the 5, which is adjacent, and the 7 is opposite, and we don't have the hypotenuse. So, if you don't know the hypotenuse, you got to use tangent. So you say tangent of x equals what? What over what? 7 over 5. So is it okay to have an improper fraction for tangent? Yes, and that's the only one it's okay to have it for, right? We can't have an improper fraction for sine or cosine. So x equals what? Inverse tangent of 7 over 5. So in your calculator, you hit second tangent, 7 divided by 5, and you got approximately how many degrees? About 54 point, it rounds up to 5 degrees. So raise your hand if you got approximately 54.5 degrees. Any questions on finding angles? Okay, so the rest of the lesson actually starts mixing it up. All right? So sometimes you're finding sides like we did yesterday, and sometimes you're finding angles like we did today. So I'm kind of glad that they did this here, because when we find side lengths, we don't use inverse, do we? But we do when we find angles, correct? Okay? So if we know, let me scroll down. If we know the angle degree right here, we're not going to use, if this is a number besides x, we're not going to use inverse. We're just going to type it straight in like we did yesterday. Okay, so I'm kind of glad they have this little mixture lesson going on. Okay, so number 7. This is review. We're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent on number 7. Why tangent? Right, this x is the adjacent, and 11 is the opposite, and we don't have a hypotenuse. So how do we set this up? Tangent of 39 degrees equals what? X over 11 or 11 over x? Yeah, opposite over adjacent. So 11 over x. So yesterday, how did we find these when our x was in a denominator? Yeah, you got to first multiply both sides by x. So yeah, on these, y'all, I have to see your work where you are solving for x before you use your calculator, okay? Equals 11, because the x's cancel. Now what? How do I get x by itself now? Divide by tangent of 39 degrees. So if you weren't here yesterday, you're getting yesterday's lesson right now. Isn't that nice? I'm getting all this crap popping up on my screen. Sorry, y'all. So tangent 39 divided by tangent 39 crosses out. So x equals 11 divided by tangent of 39 degrees. So after you get x by itself, you can use your calculator. So is everybody okay with how we got x by itself? We multiplied it on both sides to get it out of the denominator, and then we divided by tangent of 39 because it was multiplied times our x, and we want x by itself. So, calculator, what do we type in? 11 divided by tangent of 39, close parentheses, hit enter. What are we getting? Approximately what? 13.6. So x is approximately 13.6. Do we put degree signs on this? No, because x is a side of a triangle, it's not an angle. So you only put degrees on this. Got it? All right. Any questions on that one? Let's just go across and do number 8. We're not going to do all these because we did it yesterday, right? No sense in doing it all in notes. We did it yesterday. So what do you think we're going to use on number 8? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Cosine, because we know the hypotenuse, and x is the what? Adjacent side to my 46-degree angle. Okay? So how do we set up that ratio? Adjacent over hypotenuse, so x over 28. So any questions on how we set up that ratio? All right, how do we solve it for x? Yeah, it's divided by 28, so you just multiply by 28 on both sides. So 28 times the cosine of 46 degrees will equal x. So my x is by itself, so what can I do now? Type it in the calculator, and you can just type it all together. 20 times cosine, you don't have to do the times. What's that one, 46? Sorry, y'all. I hate not being able to see my notes. I can minimize it, but then my calculator is too small. I practiced on that yesterday, but it just wasn't very good. So 28 times cosine 46 is approximately what? 19.5. No degrees, right? All right, because it's the length of a side. And that makes sense because our hypotenuse is 28. So this side better be smaller than 28, correct? Yeah. So if you have your hypotenuse, always compare the legs with the hypotenuse. Flip over to the back. Let's do some of them. Okay, so on number 11, y'all just tell me out loud. On number 11, are you going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Cosine, but since you're finding an angle measure, you would have to use what? Inverse. Good. Number 12, sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent, and since you're finding an angle, you would have to use the inverse, correct? All right. Number 13, sine, cosine, or tangent? Cosine, because I have adjacent and hypotenuse, and we would be using the inverse for that one because we're finding an angle measure, right? So inverse cosine. And then number 14, sine, cosine, or tangent. Well, this is the hypotenuse, and this one's opposite, so I would be using what? Sine, and since I'm finding an angle, I would be using inverse sine, right? Got it? Okay. Y'all look at number 15. It says find the length of DE, which is this, right? So obviously, I'm going to have to find a few more things before I can find DE. Do y'all see that? Okay, well, I've got two triangles here. And I do have an angle measure in both triangles, so that's helpful. But I do not know the length of any other side in this bottom triangle, do I? No. So the first triangle, though, also has FD. Y'all see that? That both triangles have FD. So if I can find FD, then I can come find my ED. Y'all see that? So let's do that. I'm going to call this one Y then. Give it another variable. Let's do that. Because I already have this length, CF right here is 24, isn't it? CF is 24. So that gives me enough information to use the top triangle to find Y. And then after I get Y, then I can use that with my bottom triangle to get X. Y'all see that? Okay, so ignore the bottom triangle for just a second. So if I'm using that 61-degree angle, my Y and my 24, this is the hypotenuse, and I don't know it. So what do you think we're going to use? What ratio? Tangent. So we're going to say tangent. Do we know the angle measure in the top triangle? Of 61 degrees equals, what's the opposite? Y over what's adjacent? 24. So any questions on why I use tan 61 equals y over, I just said it, didn't I? Tangent of 61 degrees equals y over 24 for the first triangle, the top triangle. Okay, so how do I solve for y? First, I gotta get y by itself. How do I do it? Multiply both sides by 24. And those cancel. So 24 times tangent of 61 equals y. And then we can use our calculator. 24 times tangent of 61, close parentheses. Oops, I typed it incorrectly. 24 times tangent of 61. Y'all getting about 43.3? Okay, so y is approximately 43.3 units long. So I'm going to write that in there, 43.3. Okay, so now I can use that information to help me with the bottom triangle. And I'm trying to find this segment DE over here that I've labeled X. So I have a 19-degree angle right there. Do you think we're going to use sine, cosine, or tangent to get X? Right, X is opposite from that 19-degree angle. And the 43.3 that I just found is adjacent to the 19-degree angle because I don't have the hypotenuse of that triangle. Y'all see that? All right, so I'm going to use tangent again. This time I'm going to say tangent of 19 degrees equals, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So what side is opposite from 19 degrees? X over which is the length of the side that's adjacent to it. That 43.3 degrees, or 43.3 leg that I just found. So how do we find X? Yeah, multiply both sides by 43.3. And that just deleted everything for whatever reason. I don't know. Touch screen. Maybe it won't do it again. All right. So 43 times tangent of 19 will get me X. So 43 times tangent. Yeah, thank you. 43.3 times tangent of 19 equals. So I'll get about 14.9. Sorry, that's supposed to be 0.3 there as well. So that is X is approximately, what did I just say? 14.9. Okay. So this was one where we had to use one triangle and find a missing piece of one triangle before I could find the missing piece of another. Do y'all see how that? So it just depends on which triangle gives you the most information is what you have to go by. So any questions about number 15? Okay. So now it says to find the measure of angle W on number 16. Okay. So I'm just call it W. That's my variable I'm going to use, W for angle W. Makes sense, doesn't it? All right, so this time I'm finding an angle measure. Other than this triangle, this big triangle to the left being a right triangle, I don't know anything else about that except for this side, right? It's 22. WZ is 22. And that's not enough information to find W, right? I need to know two sides of that triangle to find W. So, you see how they share XZ here? You see how they find XZ? They share it. So I need to find the length of XZ before I can find angle W. Somebody give me a variable. Y. Okay. Little y. So I got to find little y before I can find angle W. Okay. So from this triangle on the right side, I have this 25-degree angle. What is y in relationship to that 25-degree angle? It's the hypotenuse of that right triangle, isn't it? And that 15 that they give me is what for the 25-degree angle?
Can I pick up to the office?
It's opposite. So if I've got hypotenuse and opposite, am I going to use sine, cosine, or tangent? Sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine of 25 degrees equals opposite, which is 15, over my hypotenuse, which is y. So how do I get y by itself? Multiply by y on both sides. So y times sine of 25 degrees equals 15. Now how do I get y by itself? Divide both sides by sine of 25 degrees. So in my calculator, ooh, y'all, I don't know what's up with my touchscreen today. I'm going to type in 15 divided by sine of 25 degrees. So 15 divided by sine 25. Close parentheses. Did y'all get that y is approximately 35.5? Okay. So y is approximately 35.5 units. So this, I'm going to change that to 35.5. Okay, so now I still got to find angle W. So ignore this triangle over here to the right. Now I'm looking at the triangle to the left. Now that I have found the length of XZ. So what is that 35.5 that I just found in relationship to angle W? That is opposite. And that WZ length of 22 that they've already given me is what? To angle W. It's adjacent because it's not the hypotenuse. So what are we going to use? Sine, cosine, or tangent? Tangent. Yeah, if we don't have hypotenuse, we're using tangent. So tangent of angle W is opposite over adjacent. So 35.5 over 22. Now, how do we find a missing angle measure, y'all? Got to use the inverse. So if we don't know angle measure, we have to use the inverse. So W equals inverse tangent of 35.5 over 22. Excuse my sloppiness right there. That's 35.5. So in our calculator, we're going to hit second tangent, 35.5 divided by 22. Close parentheses, enter. So W is approximately 58.2 degrees. Very good. Since W is an angle, it needs to have degrees. So do y'all see how we have to find missing pieces sometimes to find a specific piece that we want? Just depends on what information is provided in a triangle. So we are going to save the application problems for next week, probably on Monday. Have a good day.